Hello viewers and welcome to Learning with JGO. We will in this video try to understand the poem The Weaver Bird by Kofi Awoonor. Today's lesson focuses solely on the connotative meaning of the poem. I entreat you all to like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any updates. Let's begin this lesson by taking a quick look at the poem just to have a sense of it. The weaver bird built in our house and lays its eggs on our only tree. We did not want to send it away. We watched the building of the nest and supervised the egg laying. And the weaver returned in the guise of the owner, preaching salvation to us that own the house. They say it came from the west, where the storms at sea had felled the gulls, and the fishers dried their nets by lantern light. Its sermon is a divination of ourselves, and our new horizons limits as its nests. But we cannot join the prayers and answers of the communicants. We look for new homes every day. For new altars we strive to rebuild, the old shrines defiled by the weaver's excrement. The Weaver Bird is a poem that talks about the advent of colonization in Africa and its unpleasant mark left on the African continent. We realize from the beginning of the poem that Africans were paid unexpected visits by the Europeans. Despite being foreign and alien, Africans still welcomed the Europeans with open arms without having any thought whatsoever that the visitors they were welcoming could prove to be atrocious people. To further complicate matters, Africans made the visitors, that is, the Europeans, feel very comfortable in their continent. So much so that these Europeans began establishing their own homes. Africans saw them build houses and castles. They saw them introduce foreign goods. They saw them explore the rich fields that Africans possessed. And yet, Africans did nothing but watch with uttermost ignorance. After surveying the continent of Africa and getting familiar with the unlimited amount of natural resources present, the Europeans called for reinforcements to aid in their unscrupulous motives. That is to say, these Europeans appeared suddenly to Africans as the owners of the continent. At first, they were mere visitors and then suddenly became owners. Colonization began at this point. Many Europeans started fighting amongst themselves to claim ownership to African lands. To create sanity, they decided to partition the African continent. That is, creating boundaries around areas on the African lands, with each party claiming ownership of the various lands together with their people. How did the Europeans begin to take ownership of Africa? They did this, according to the poem, using religion. Religion was first used as a tool to enslave African minds so as to easily get Africans do their bidding. The coming of the missionaries says it all. They preached the gospel of salvation to the African people while engineering their ultimate plan to capture the continent. Africans fell for the words in the holy book of the Europeans, as it contained divinations and prophecies which allowed the Europeans predict African lives. A sense of fear and submission to the new religion equally meant a complete submission to the whims and caprices of the Europeans. This started through unjust trade and ended with the slavery of the African people. Through the weapon of religion, Africa gave birth to new cultures, courtesy of the Europeans. Africans adopted a new god. They started developing taste for foreign food, dresses, entertainment, and many other spheres of a culture one can think about. The Europeans succeeded in making Africans believe that the European culture was better than the African, and that it contained value and substance than the African culture that had persisted for a long time. The new experiences of Africans will ultimately be limited by the laws and practices of the Europeans. The poet, as the voice of Africa, rebukes the abomination set upon them by the Europeans. He calls out to his fellow Africans not to join the new culture that has been perpetuated by the Europeans. He admonishes all Africans not to accept solutions proposed by the Europeans to African problems. According to him, every solution proposed by the Europeans to African problems comes with a cost. It comes with dire consequences. In every step or move the Europeans make, there lie behind those moves ulterior motives which will give Africans temporary relief to their problems, but ultimately worsen their predicament. A reason the poet gives for Africans not to depend on Europeans for answers is that Africans still sneak back into traditional homes for instant answers to their problems, despite being devout Christians. It goes on to show how dissatisfied Africans are with their new horizons and will go any lengths to find the answers they crave for. The poem ends on a note of hope for Africans to rebuild their identity, as the culture presented to them by their ancestors are fast fading, if not faded away. The task is for Africans to take charge of themselves and the potential they can give to future generations.
Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment and share.